So, welcome all participants to this session of Dhanavardhini. As you know, I am Advocate Dr. Mahendra Limaye presenting today's topic. It was very short notice, and the topic today is, I think most of you have gone through, that is recent compromises which FTC dealt with, compromise settlements, and user privacy violation of Twitter. So, this is the topic which is for discussion today. I will be presenting just what is the summary of the FTC or DOJ judgment which was passed against Twitter, and we will have to discuss it or go through it in on the perspective of how users' privacy are violated. So I have few slides to go through, and then we can have a discussion, because as I understand, everybody is interested in sharing his or her views on user privacy, and the organization FDPPI is mostly dealing with the same since last few years. So to start with the topic, the background of this particular topic was related to, one minute, presentation is, yeah. So this is in common domain that Twitter collects certain information from each user and makes it part of user's public profile. So such information includes username, profile image, list of other Twitter accounts whom the user follows and is followed by, and at the user's option, a website address, location, time zone, etc. So this is all what is becoming as a profile, what public profile is all about. Then Twitter also collects certain information about its users that it does not make public. So it is projected by Twitter that they don't publicize or they don't make public this particular information. This information includes email address, internet protocol address, then mobile number, service provider details, username for Twitter account, etc. So this is what Twitter itself shows or says, that they don't make this particular information public. So I want to take a pause and ask or throw a question to audience. How many of us believe on this Twitter's assurance that they don't make this information public? This is assurance given by Twitter. So your responses, please. The assurance given by tweet. Yeah, Adepusi.
See, when this Twitter is collecting information, they should have published a privacy policy. Right, sir?
Yeah.
In the privacy policy, they might declare this is what you are going to do, this we are not going to do it.
They have published it, Adepuji. They have published it on their website that they don't make this information public.
That is all it is.
Second, it is very much, yeah.
What are the percentage of company what you listed? Are they given justification why they are collecting it before collection?
So they have mentioned on their public policy or their disclaimers or their terms and conditions that this is private information, this is public information, and private information will not be shared with anyone. So this is understanding of everybody when a big giant like Twitter says that we don't make public any information which we treat as private information. Everybody blindly believes on Twitter. So this is the crux of the matter, that how these social media giants are taking users' privacy as granted. So they know whatever they claim, nobody is going to challenge to them, and hence they can manipulate with any information which they have. And this is what happened in present case. So I'm just presenting background of the present case. So moving to next slide. Twitter offers privacy settings through which a user may choose to designate tweet as non-public. For example, Twitter offers user the ability to send direct messages to a specified followers and mentions that only author and recipient can view such messages. How many of you are aware the same gimmick played by Facebook few years ago? Facebook has started this particular service between you and me, and Facebook openly mentioned that these messages can be read by either user or recipient or intended recipient, and none else can read those particular messages. And after some time, that between you and me service was discontinued by Facebook itself. So this is what happens when Twitter says this is a direct message, one-to-one message, only author and recipient can view such message. So this is clearly mentioned on the website or on the terms and conditions of Twitter that only author and recipient can view such messages. Twitter also allows users to click a button labeled protect my tweets or who can follow your tweet. So Twitter has mentioned or Twitter has made user comfortable that with protecting your tweets or who can follow you, etc., you have entire control over the activities of your account, and that was believed by everyone. Now, this is part 2 of the case. What we are seeing, I just make you understand the background of this particular matter. This matter was between July 2006 to 2009. So we are in 2022. This matter, first part of this particular Twitter case is related to year 2006 to 2009, and second part starts after 2016 to 2019. So there are two parts of this one particular judgment that we have to carefully understand. So first part, for approximately 6 till 2009, Twitter almost all of its users the ability to exercise administrative control of the Twitter system, including to reset account password, view users non-public tweets, etc. So Twitter's employees were allowed to access users account between July 2006 to 2009. So that is one part of it. Thereafter, from approximately July 2006 until January 2009, Twitter's employees entered their administrative credentials into same web page where users logged into, that is twitter.com. So Twitter had not made any different arrangements for its employees to access that particular platform and give administrative controls or use their administrative rights. So only one common access was available to the users as well as administrators for accessing this sort of public login web page. And in the same period, Twitter instructed each employee to use a personal email account. So there was not specific company account or Twitter specific say email ID was provided to the employees for using their administrative rights. So we may find this as very funny provisions that a company like Twitter asking its employees to use their personal account or personal email IDs to access their admin rights. But it all happened between July 2006 to July 2009. So this is first part of the matter. Based on this particular activity, Twitter also stated that this is what is Twitter's response to the complaint which was filed by FTC and Department of Justice in year 2011. So we are talking about part 1 of the Twitter episode because everybody presumed that this 150 million compromise settlement is related to whatever has happened recently. But it has the history of one particular judgment which was passed by FTC in year 2011, almost 11 years ago. So this is what right now we are discussing is part of 2011 judgment. This is what was Adepusar's question, that whether Twitter informed its user. This is Twitter's response in 2011, that Twitter is very concerned about safeguarding the confidentiality of your personal right, personally identifiable information, etc. And Twitter has claimed that we employ administrative, physical, and other electronic measures designed to protect your information from unauthorized access. So this is what was Twitter's response to this particular argument. Then another argument or another response of Twitter was that private Twitter messages, in addition to public updates, you can send followers private tweets or direct messages to direct messages, and these are not public. Only author and recipient can see those messages. So it was another hollow promise or hollow promise made by Twitter, that apart from user, means sender and recipient, no one can read those particular message. But in fact, all the administrators of Twitter had access to those particular direct messages. That is the latter part of judgment. Then there was another aspect which Twitter made users to believe, that there can be public or protected accounts. So if you avail facility of protected accounts, your account will remain confidential or will remain protected, and protected account owners can control who is able to follow them and keep their updates. So public cannot follow the protected account. That was another promise made by Twitter. So it all happened in year 2000, between 2006 to 2009, and these are the findings of FDC in year 2011. Contrary to the policies, Twitter has engaged in a number of practices and failed to provide reasonable and appropriate security to prevent unauthorized access to non-public users' information and honor the privacy exercised by its users in designating certain tweets as non-public. So this is finding of FTC. It is very much available on website of FTC. Those who want to follow this particular case, all the details are available on FTC website. So I have gathered all this information from FTC website itself. And another finding of FTC was that Twitter failed to prevent unauthorized administrative control of the Twitter by, among other things, failing to establish or enforce policies sufficient to make administrative passwords strong. So prohibit means, this was the first observation, that Twitter failed to make its user aware that their administrative passwords should be strong. Another finding was that prohibit storage of administrative passwords, then suspend or disable administrative passwords after a reasonable number of time or login attempts, then provide an administrative login web page that we already discussed, that admins as well as users were able to access the same login web page, then enforce periodic changes of administrative passwords. So these are routine guidelines which we are following regularly right now. But initially, Twitter was not following these particular guidelines. Restrict each person's access to administrative control and impose restrictions on access. So these all are the findings of FTC, that Twitter grossly failed to follow reasonable security practices which are required to be followed by a responsible organization. So this observation goes back to 2011. So this was 2011 observation by FTC. And what was the charge against Twitter in that particular previous old case? That between January and May 2019, intruders exploited the failures of these sort of activities and obtained unauthorized administrative control of the various Twitter systems. And through these administrative controls, intruders were able to gain unauthorized access to non-public tweets and non-public user information. It means the sensitive personal information or the information which Twitter displayed as a confidential information, non-public information, that information was accessed and reset any user's password and send unauthorized tweets from that particular user's account. So this is another serious, say, loophole which was exploited by, say, criminals or some unwanted elements in the system of Twitter in year 2011. There were a lot of instances when some handles of celebrity were used to send tweets in year 2009 between January and May, and then FTC took action. These were two counts. Means normally in US the word count is used, that respondent Twitter did not use a reasonable and appropriate security measures to prevent unauthorized access to non-public users information. Therefore, representation was and is false or misleading. So contention of Twitter that we availed all appropriate reasonable security practices and tried our level best to protect users information. The FTC, or we can say the court, found that this representation of Twitter is false and misleading. It is, I think, unbelievable to digest this sort of findings from the court or FTC, because what we still believe that whatever this social media giant says, that is gospel truth. We don't have guts to challenge what social media giant says, but this is the observation of FTC, that Twitter representation regarding reasonable security practices was and is false or misleading. Second observation, in truth and in fact, responded, that is Twitter, did not use reasonable and appropriate security measures to honor the privacy choices exercised by users. So this is in a way cheating with users. When you are assuring or you are guaranteeing that your privacy will be protected, and what is the finding? Did not use reasonable and appropriate security measures to honor the privacy choices exercised by the users. And this representation of using reasonable and appropriate security measures was also found to be false and misleading. So this is the case of 2009-11, and the findings were the acts and practices of respondent as alleged in the complaint constitute deceptive acts or practices in or affecting commerce in violation of Section 5A of Federal Trade Commission Act, FTC Act. So this was the clear-cut finding that Twitter didn't follow any reasonable security practices in protecting user information. But still, it was 2011. We never know what happened to that particular judgment. This is decision and order. FTC Commission having initiated an investigation of certain practices of the respondent Twitter, charged the respondent with violation of FTC Act 15 code we have just seen, and respondent and counsel for commission having thereafter, after going through agreement containing consent order and accepting the respondent of all jurisdictional facts set forth in aforesaid act, and a compromise settlement was reached in year 2011, and wherein Twitter gave this particular assurance that they will adopt all reasonable security practices to protect the user's information. So first thing is, when there was clear-cut observation in year 2011 that Twitter has not followed reasonable security practices, a compromise settlement was reached and some warnings were given. So it normally happens, they were pardoned through that particular compromise settlement. They were asked and there was not huge penalty imposed on Twitter in year 2011. So this is how social media is able to manipulate even the prime institutions. Then what happened in present case, that is 2022. This is the recent judgment. It had some background with year 2011 observations. That's why I gathered the information of 2011 judgment also, because that is also a part of this particular activity. So what happened recently, that is, this is case 3 of 22 of you can find it on FTC website. Now here, most interesting part is, look who is plaintiff. In previous matter also, Department of Justice, US Department of Justice, Government of United States of America is the plaintiff. Can you believe, in country like India, Government of India becoming a complainant against any social media platform? But this happened in US, that plaintiff was Department of Justice. This action was brought against Twitter under section 16A of FTC Commission Act, etc., etc. And the charges were Twitter's acts or practices amounts to violation of section 5A of FTC Act, which we have seen previously. That is unfair use or unfair practices. That was the charge against Twitter again in year 2022. That's why this decision is very significant. And now this is second part of this particular judgment. 2006 to 2009, they were failed to carry out reasonable security practices. They assured DOJ that we will follow good standard practices to protect user information, but still it was observed that Twitter misrepresented users of its online communication services, the extent to which it maintained and protected the security and privacy of their non-public contact information. Specifically, while Twitter represented to users that it collected their telephone numbers, email addresses to secure their accounts, Twitter failed to protect this information and also used users' contact information to aid advertisers in reaching targeted or specific audience. This is clear-cut indication how social media giant like Twitter is not following its commitment given to DOJ or a state, and still goes on misrepresenting its users regarding various security practices. So this was very serious charge that Twitter misused the contact details of users for targeted advertisements. Now I have a small for audience how Twitter gathered contact details, that is email ID and phone number of users. Your guesses, please. How Twitter gathered this information of contact number, telephone number, and email ID? Yes,
They
this
use
is,
it to they
yeah.
use security as the measure, as the way to get it from the users.
So yeah, Namit has hit nail on head, because that was the trap laid by Twitter, that to make your account foolproof, if you forgot your password, there has to be some backup arrangement, etc., etc. They ask this particular user, say email ID or mobile number as a additional security measures, and everybody was mesmerized by this particular practice of Twitter. Yeah, Twitter is very good. It is providing additional security, additional factor of authentication. So if you share your mobile number with Twitter, nobody can access your Twitter account. Or if somebody tries to access your Twitter account, automatically message will come on your mobile number. But this case clearly shows this was a trap laid by Twitter, and Twitter failed to protect those particular details and openly shared that particular confidential information with advertisers. So what more proof is needed regarding intention of social media giants? So this is how the case stood, that Twitter service is widely used. As of 2019, Twitter has more than million monthly active users worldwide, including journalists, celebrities, commercial brands, etc., and government officials. And out of which 23.5 million users are from India. Commercial entities regularly use Twitter to promote offers or advertisements to consumers, and many tweets contain links to other websites, and user may land into those particular, clicking those particular links. And this is Twitter's core business. What information is monetized, that in fact, out of $3.4 billion revenue that Twitter earned in year 2019, 90% of the revenue, that is 2.99 billion, flowed from the advertising. So this is how Twitter used individuals' contact details for its advertising purpose. So this is where DOJ charged Twitter in this particular second case. So this is how Twitter cleverly fooled each and every user. Twitter primarily allows companies to advertise on its services through two types of activities. That is, first is promoted product. There are three options for promoted products. That is, one is promoted tweets, which appear within a user's timeline, search result, or prominent pages, similar to an ordinary tweet. Second is promoted account, which appear in same format and places as other recommended accounts. And third is promoted trends, which appear at the top of list of trending trends and remains there for entire day. So Twitter has this one type of facility which is known as promoted products, which is used by advertisers, and another is Twitter offers various services that advertisers can use to reach their targeted audience for marketing, and this is either tailored audience or partner audience. So tailored audience allows advertisers to target specific groups of Twitter users by matching telephone numbers and email addresses. These email numbers, means email addresses and numbers, are collected by Twitter on the pretext of that particular security warning, what we discussed previously. That is first part, that is tailored audience, and another is partner audience, which allows advertisers to import marketing lists from other sources, and then they can match that particular marketing list with telephone numbers or emails available with Twitter. So all type of these sort of malpractices are allowed by Twitter to reach targeted audience or tailored audience. So this was the observation of FTC. Now, this facility, as we know, which was provided by or promoted by Twitter, that prompted users to provide telephone numbers or email address, And what was mentioned that for purpose of securing authentication or authenticating their Twitter accounts, and this was manipulated for tailored or targeted audience. So more than 140 million Twitter users provided email addresses and telephone numbers to Twitter based on Twitter's deceptive statement that their information would be used for specific purposes related to account security. This is not my finding. This is finding of FTC that more than 140 million Twitter account users provided email addresses or telephone numbers. What we have understood in our PDPB or even GDPR, the data should be used for the specific purpose for which it is gathered. So Twitter gathered that particular data for specific security purpose, or making people believe that this particular email ID and mobile number will be used for privacy purpose only for security activities, and Twitter openly shared this particular data with advertisers. And what is the relevance of 2011 matter? Twitter knew or was knowing that this conduct violated the 2011 FTC order, which prohibited Twitter misrepresenting in any manner that how Twitter maintains email addresses and telephone numbers of its users. So in year 2019 also, Twitter openly violated what was the commitment given to FTC in year 2011, and this matter was going on till September 2019 when this particular case was put up against Twitter by Department of Justice, United States of America. Now, another point which is of very significance is Twitter deceptively used information provided for two-factor authentication, information provided for future account recovery to serve targeted advertisers. Twitter also misrepresented that it processed personal data in accordance with EU-US or Swiss-US Privacy Shield framework. So in year 2022, two different charges were put up against Twitter, which we will be going to see now, that this was the relief which was asked by Department of Justice, that is enter judgment against Twitter. This is normally what legal terminology is. What are the reliefs from the court? That is enter judgment against Twitter and in favor of plaintiff, that is Department of Justice, for violating the 2011 order and FTC acts as alleged in complaint. Second was award plaintiff monetary civil penalties from Twitter for each violation of 2011 order, enter a permanent injunction to prevent future violations by Twitter, and order it subsequently modified by operations of law, then award monetary and other relief within the court's power to grant, and award an additional relief as court determines to be just and proper. And what was the outcome of this particular 2019 case decided on 25th May? That is, Twitter prayed for compromise settlement of $150 million to be paid to Department of Justice, United States of America. So this is the background for today's discussion, that a social media giant having committed or given commitment to Department of one government that they will follow the reasonable security practices, etc., etc. Based on that particular undertaking of 2011, Twitter was allowed to act in public domain, and still in year 2019, it was found that the promises or the assurances or the undertakings given by Twitter were not followed, or rather grossly violated, and additional, say, infringements were committed by a social media platform, and the ultimate outcome was only 150 million, that is compromise settlement, which is offered by Twitter. So when it is compromise settlement, it is normally seen as a win-win case for both the parties. So there could have been bigger penalty to Twitter than $150 million, but as a compromise settlement, FTC accepted this 115 million compromise settlement, and now this compromise settlement is passed to their apex body for acceptance, and I'm sure or hopeful that this will be accepted by DOJ's apex body, and Twitter will pay $100 million fine to government of America or United States of America, and it will again will be free bird. And one of the important aspect of this particular case was that Twitter underlined that they have not accepted any charges, but in the interest of justice or in the interest of, say, larger public safety, they are accepting this 150 million compromise settlement. So nowhere in this particular matter, Twitter accepted or acknowledged that they have violated reasonable security practices, or they have violated the guidelines which are mandatory for performing reasonable security practices of the users, and thereby the stand of Twitter is still that whatever they are doing, they are following all the reasonable security practices and they have done no wrong. So now the presentation is over and it is floor is open for open discussion. This is recent topic, and as I mentioned in title that this particular topic has background of Facebook's 5 billion compromise settlement, which happened almost 7 to 8 months back. So 7 to 8 months back, Facebook also accepted FTC's compromise settlement, and that particular judgment was on the backdrop of the Cambridge Analytica matter. So Facebook permitted certain apps to be associated with one particular account, and Cambridge Analytica got hold of a lot of users' account. So that was the backdrop of Facebook $5 billion compromise settlement. Now Twitter 150 million compromise settlement, and that's why in my blog what I have written that 23.5 million Indian users paying $6.5 each means every Indian Twitter user is paying rupees 500 to United States of America. So it could be seen as a America Relief Fund. So this particular explanation of Twitter incident is coming to end now, and I am throwing floor open for the participants to share their own views.
Thank you, Limaye sir. Sir, one question.
Yeah.
In India, when a company start a business, they file memorandum of understanding, business model, everything with a government regulator, like company, reserve companies in India. They file papers listing what their business model, what they are going to do it, everything in a document which we submit to reserve companies. Am I right, sir?
Correct.
Okay, like that, in America, this Twitter might have submitted their documents to a authority. What is their business model, what they are going to do, what they are going to offer, everything. Okay, sir. I don't know what is the regulator in America. That regulator of America have verified the violation or the basic commitment they are given to the government at the time of the float in the company or not.
So you are referring to Companies Act, that is Article of Association or Memorandum. So
yes, sir.
That is one department which is taking care of that particular activity. Here FTC, that is Federal Trade Commission, that is dealing with the users. It is like consumer commission. In India also we have FTC, and a lot of matters are going before FTC of this sort of user rights violation. So whatever agreement or whatever licenses Twitter has observed, FTC has clearly found that whatever promises which were issued by the Twitters were found to be not satisfactory. In a way, Twitter has cheated while issuing those particular promises. So that was evident from this particular judgment that FTC has observed that Twitter is grossly misusing whatever user privacy is all about. And but ultimately it is, when it is compromise settlement, both the parties have agreed. So it can be seen as a hand in glove judgment. Both the parties have compromised, and as I read to this particular judgment, we Indian Twitter users ending in paying rupees 500 each, and American users not required to pay anything, because whatever information we are sharing through these social platforms, every information is being sold, and that is proved by this particular judgment. So whatever you have means in mind, that whether they have given that particular commitment to certain organization in United States of America, that particular commitment is found to be violated by this particular activity of the Twitter. And not once, it happened twice. Means 2011 Twitter was charged, and again in year 2019 Twitter was charged. So in normal legal language, they are termed as habitual offenders. That is the only word which I can use for this sort of organization. These are habitual offenders.
Sir, my question is about,
Yeah.
see, as I told you, we have a list of companies in India. Like that, there may be an agency in America who will first authorize a company to do business. Whether that particular regulator of America, did they verify time to time what is this company doing on a regular basis, on a periodical basis or not? That is one question. If that particular regulator or the monitoring authority of the companies in America, they are not regularly verifying the business practices of the Twitter or different companies, so they fail on their duty. FTC is different, sir. FTC watch that. I know you say FTC, but I am what I want to find out is an equal of our list of companies, how they acted upon the company from time to time to verify whether the business model, business practices are as per the papers filed for the start of the business. For example, in India,
what I understand from your question, yeah, if you are comparing Companies Act and Data Protection Act. So as far as Companies Act is concerned, that is the activity which is related to whether you have filed your returns, etc., etc. They are not going to enter into your business module. Whether you have filed certain statutory or whether you have complied with statutory regulatory provisions. That is the only role of that particular department. Here the matter is different. Twitter is carrying out business. They have registered under, say, some particular act. They have obtained license from that particular organization. But what business module they are adopting, that is subject to some different organization. And that's why FTC stepped in, because they thought that customer security is compromised. Twitter's business model, if they are paying tax, whether income tax authority will run after them, if their balance sheet is okay, they are paying taxes as per their declared income. So this is what I understand is the problem. Every ministry will be looking to its specified agenda, that my object is income tax department, my object is whether tax is properly paid. Companies department, whether proper compliances have been made. That is what I understood through that is my limited understanding of your question. Anybody having different answer can explain or share their views, because I'm not clear what Adepu sir is targeting to.
No targeting, sir. It's only I want to find out.
No, targeting in the sense, what is your specific question?
I want to find out.
Not able to understand. I have not read US laws, so I won't be able to comment on that.
Okay, sir.
Limaye, you see,
Yeah.
You told this $150 million judgment is seemingly a hand-in-glove compromise only, isn't it?
Yes, it is
When it
compromise settlement.
yeah.
It is compromise
Yeah.
settlement.
But I think there is no deterrent against the future violations. Even in America, even after violation of 2011 judgment, the government came into compromise this way. So where is the protection for the users globally?
That's what my point is, that users are taken for a ride by each and every government, may it be US government or Indian government or any other government. Users are taken for ride unless users are aware about their rights, and that's why users must be aware what their rights are. Here it was specifically observed that they have cheated or even fooled users that your mail ID and mobile number is required for security purpose. So that particular intention was fraudulent activity. Similarly, if you go through the judgment of Facebook, Facebook accepted 500 billion compromise settlement. And if you go through the history of US stock markets on that particular day, after accepting 500 billion penalty from FTC compromise settlement, Facebook share rose to new high on that particular day because they were expecting huge penalties and even criminal action against directors of Facebook. So everywhere the social media giants with their money power are able to bend that particular judicial mechanism and make merry of users' data. So unless users are aware about their rights, if we start not sharing, disclosing any information on Twitter, Twitter won't get any information to compromise with, but we are not aware how this particular information is used, and that is why FTC or similar organizations are required to step in for, say, that is also their guest appearance. $150 million in 12 years, that is sufficient, what FTC has done. So it is, in my way, no deterrent to these social media giants. There has to be some criminal penalty imposed in such activities, then only it will be deterrent. And that's why our certain provisions are being objected, because in recent certain guidelines, there are criminal provisions as far as these sort of violations are concerned. And that's why these media giants or all everybody is objecting to that particular provisions. That is my understanding.
True, sir. In fact, thank you for your long answer. But at the same time, if this is the case with Twitter, the problem prevails wherever there is provision for two-factor authentication, whether it is Twitter, Facebook, or Google, or Microsoft, wherever there is two-factor authentication, wherever we are giving this mobile number and email ID, we have the same similar problems, isn't it?
Sure, because nobody is denying that, but that is the biggest trap laid, that everybody is required to use this sort of activities without knowing what happens on the back end, because how our information is compromised, that is the biggest trap laid for each and every user. So any information you provide to any social media giants, that information is going to be sold, because
Yes.
nothing comes for free. And if social media platforms are offering each and every service for free of cost, so it is written there that your information is going to be compromised. That is the basic rule. No free lunches, but still we accept these free lunches from social media giants. So we are falling into those particular pitfalls.
True, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
My question is that can Indian government intervene in the compromise formula on behalf of 23.5 million Indian users and ask for some part of $150 million?
Indian government out of question. Indian government out of question, but you can certainly represent to FTC that it is acknowledged in their say documentation that these are the users of Twitter. So you can ask for that particular share, or you can approach Indian FTC for this sort of data violations. That is good suggestion, Paitankar sir. I will certainly think over the same. Whether Indian users
we
can get their
we
due
can
rights.
yeah, we can file together a PIL for that purpose.
Many stalwarts are there who can also guide whether Indian 23.5 millions can recover some portion out of that 150 million, which is which is due to be paid by Twitter to American government. Now, sir, your views? Can we ask for our share in
No,
150 million?
No, if in case the judgment provides for that, a representation can be made, but not by any individuals, but by the government of India, perhaps, or somebody authorized by the government of India. Okay.
Sir, that is not possible.
Do we have any violation of Indian laws in this case?
No, this is it, right? If you take Indian law, there will be more violations. Okay, that is only if the proceedings had been done here. Now, if you say this is a compromise, and on behalf of the Indian people, that it has been decided that there is a violation of privacy by a US, say, judicial authority, I think that is a presumption enough to say that an Indian consumer can also claim compensation in the US judicial forum, I suppose. What do you say?
True, sir. I agree. I agree.
Sir, I think Consumer Protection Act has this particular power now. 2019 Consumer Protection Act has this particular provision. So we will have to look into that particular provision, whether this sort of relief can be obtained.
But this relief cannot be
certainly a
individually
topic
claimed.
for
It cannot be perhaps individually claimed. There has to be a government authority which has to represent the consumers in general.
Or collective representation of consumers can also be made.
Yeah, but collecting
MG
the
sir,
money and then
MG sir wants to make some point.
Once you collect it, redistribution responsibility is also there, no? So that cannot be entrusted to a private entity. So a government only has to take care. For example, the government should collect everything and then, like in an inquiry commission, ask people to submit their claims, if any, to that commission and distribute it, like a receiver collecting and distributing it. Anyway, that's I don't think that will happen. But
shall I speak, sir?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. See here, two routes are coming to my mind. One is it's an international event. Any violations in India should be from Indian courts. So we have to file a case in India for violations of Indian privacy, keeping this also as an evidence, his submissions in the international court or US court as an evidence, irrefutable evidence, and we should charge these guys and we have to pass an order against these people. They themselves should say, no, we have already committed there. A part of it, we will request them. Through that, it is maybe possible. Or our courts on their own can institute that and ask for that kind of compensation. Thirdly, between Indian government and US government, if they try to take a share, a kind of a share of that, it will be like a begging. They may not entertain also, and it is not legally tenable. So either we should pursue a petition against these authorities and we should seek relief. And this relief will be, if got from after being proved by Indian courts and held as so, it will be only to the consumer welfare fund. It cannot be sent to individual accounts also. So that's my opinion.
I agree. Yeah.
Ravi sir.
Yeah.
See, there was a case in USA, that is Athena Healthcare, when there was a disclosure of unintentional personal information to public through communications. A group of people approached a law firm in USA. They filed a case. So the case was given in favor of the petitioners. And Athena has paid the money to individual petitioners divided by the number of people claimed effectively. So that is happens when the money awarded by a court through a judgment, if it is from the people, affected parties, the interested parties. But in this case, the government the FTC only approached it. That's why the judgment has given the benefit of the remuneration of the settlement amount to FTC only, not the individuals. In case a group of Americans who got affected with this disclosure from the Twitter, if they approach, then they get the compensation. That is my understanding from the case of Athena Healthcare.
Even Americans, sir, even Americans, if they want relief individually, they have to file a suit themselves and they should prove in a court of law that their privacy has been violated. And what is their,
what happens, sir?
Then only a part could be given. But if they don't file any suit, it will go to welfare funds and it will be used as a common fund only.
In case of Athena Healthcare, they are a service provider. They disclose their personal information in public places like open covers. So that is a case which has been decided in 2014 when I was in USA. It happened. Sometime back was an issue. So
you might refer to Union Carbide judgment where individual victims got the money, Union Carbide judgment.
Yes.
So victims will have come forward. That is what MG sir's suggestion is. Victims will have to come forward and claim their compensation. Then only they will get. That's why I named it as America Relief Fund. So this is going to Treasury of US. So we are supporting American Relief Fund.
Actually, it is a donation of Indian people. You have rightly put it. And Indian people cannot claim this with US also. In international matters, government is the agency. Individuals have no locus standi also. Even Indian wants to claim in US, he has to go through the government channel through courts of India only. So he has not opened to challenge it in US also. Kindly, that's also an important, because it is an international affair. It's an affair between two governments. And therefore, we have to go through the government after proving in the court of law. From the courts only it should go. And it's a very tedious task. Instead, better we file a PIL, make that fellow pay through his nose here, or he should allow that government also to get into our government so that a part of it is given back to us, to our funds.
Do you believe Twitter coming to Indian government for $150 million settlement agreement? Some top agencies will compromise it in the 5-10 millions and everything will be washed out. Nothing will come into public domain.
At least something will come. But to make out a case is very, very tough. That's what I'm telling. Here, to build the case, to prove the violation of the law of the Indian citizens, it is going to be very tough ask, not easy. Because it's a criminal offense. You people know better than me. It's very difficult. Even though a murder has happened, to prove that it has been it's a murder, it takes ages. And it has taken 20 years to give a judgment for a road rage case. You know very well. And that too, 1,000 rupees fine now with a 1 year rigorous imprisonment. When this is the approach in Indian courts itself, if you approach Indian court now, I think next generation, we may get a pittance. So it's better to be happy whatever is happening and tighten the present laws in India so that violations in India are met with by individuals themselves. So it's very high time we have our privacy law here and our privacy lawyers taking up the cause and make it happen in India for any Indians' privacy violations. That's what I feel, sir.
There was one question from Navi sir that going to, sir, I think our sir has answered this particular question that you cannot go for parliamentarians for contempt because they are the whole authority to decide whether law is needed or not. So I don't think I had a long time ago, this is in my mind that why PDPB is not passed in spite of undertaking given to Supreme Court. But they will say that lawmakers are supreme and we cannot instruct them. So ultimately, This is going on from one court to another. That is just dilly-dallying tactics are being adopted. So I think it's over. I thank all for attending this particular session and thank all the participants who joined this particular session.
This was a very
Thank
good
you.
program.
Thank you all.
I learned a lot. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.